All right, we are live. Good morning, everyone. Yuli, Jose, Carlos, Fausto. Who else is on here? Erica, good morning. Jose, Yasniel, Andres, what's up, my man? Corey, Bill, Nicholas, Ronald, Matt. Awesome, guys. Thank you for joining the webinar. We haven't done one of these in a long time. The goal is to get one of these going every single month. So hopefully we could really get this moving. This month it's going to be about the appraisal process. Next month it'll be about, I don't know, who knows what. But we'll see. Can you all hear me? Just, I guess, to make sure, if I just get one okay, make sure everyone hears me loud and clear. This way I don't have to adjust any kind of sound or anything like that. So if somebody could say, give me a thumbs up if you could hear me. Milan, if you could let me know if you could hear me. All right, cool. So guys, just so you know, on the side we've got the chat. Feel free to chat amongst each other. I'll try to do my best to just sort of keep an eye on it, but I'm going to go full screen on the webinar, so might not be able to keep too much track of it. But Milan will also be there to answer any of your questions. For those of you who don't know Milan is who I like to refer to as the Serbian assassin. The reason why he's a Serbian assassin is because, number one, he is my virtual assistant who lives in Serbia, and number two, he's an assassin when it comes to social media. So Milan is there. Feel free to ask any questions. He could help you guys out if we're in the middle of anything. Guys, get to the poll. There's a poll here that says basically, have you ever been an appraiser, and have you gone through the appraisal process before as an appraiser? Not as like somebody shadowing, not as somebody just there on the side. I want you guys to answer the question. See, I'd like to see how many of you guys have actually acted as an appraiser before. That's pretty much it. What we're going to do is we're going to go about 30 minutes. This is not going to be a crazy extended long webinar like we just did with a lot of our consultation people. It's going to be 30 minutes. The goal is to be done here by 11:30, and then we're going to leave. You could leave after that, or you could stay around for me to ask the questions. I'm going to try to just do about 15 minutes because sometimes the questions, they get a little long, but that's okay. We're going to do our best to ask it. Make sure, do not ask the question in the chat. I would prefer if you guys ask the question in the button where it says ask a question. So go ahead, ask away there, and then Milan will try to help answer any of the questions that he can. Obviously, if it's appraisal related and insurance claim related, it's going to be tough for him to answer. So I'll answer at the end. I'll go through them one by one and just try to knock them out and answer them all. As a result of this webinar, and for you guys that are live, as of now, we've got 46 and counting. All 46 of you and counting will be receiving 4 things. Let me take a look at it real quick. Exactly. It's basically, you're going to get basically a blank slate sort of copy of the appraisal contract, because we're going to get to, sometimes you cannot be a PA and appraiser at the same time, so you have to have a different contract. I'll explain to that later. I'm also going to send you my appraisal request letter that I send certified, also the appraisal request email that we send attaching the letter, and then a checklist. You're just going to send you a nice little good looking checklist to make sure that you've checked everything off if you're considering going to appraisal, and make sure you've got all your ducks in a row. And then you're also going to get a PDF copy of the entire webinar presentation. So, huge advantage to coming to the webinars live. We're still not sure. I think we're probably going to put it on YouTube, like this whole webinar. So, but you understand that by you coming live, you're going to get the tools that you need to really be successful. And that only goes to you guys that are here, that are live, which is, like I said, 46 and counting. Hopefully we can hit 50. But so you'll be able to get all those tools. So it should be pretty good. So I guess without further ado, if you could just give me a couple of seconds here to make sure that I do this right, because I tend to screw this up. I'm going to try to share my screen. Please wish me luck. Let's see here. Application window. All right. Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we should go to... I think we're sharing. Just to make sure, just again, I don't want to screw it up. Milan, if you could send me a message on Facebook here, just to make sure that, because I can't see the webinar anymore now that I'm full screen here. So just to make sure. All right, Awesome. So we're good. So you guys see my big old hands there. So, all right, Claims Advocate webinar, September 6th, 11 a.m. It's past 11 a.m. So we are good to go. So this is webinar number 3. So we're going to go through this. Let's see how long it takes us to go through this. So why are we doing this? I mean, you guys know, I'm just trying to help you guys out, honestly. We've created a nice little platform here for really all of your questions and your concerns. And frankly, the goal here is to just try to help all new and aspiring public adjusters. I like to tell people, anybody who's either just starting out or been in a public adjusting world for about 5 years or so, I think you guys are going to benefit tremendously from a lot of the content that we provide. Obviously, we're trying to educate you guys as much as possible. A lot of different things that go on when it comes to the appraisal process and just the claims process in general. So this is just a way that we could really help you guys out to make sure you're getting properly educated, because at the end of the day, we are not competitors, okay? As public adjusters, we need to work together. We need to make sure that we sort of join forces, educate each other. I don't know everything. I'm learning every day still. After 12 and a half years, I'm still learning every day from you guys and from other public adjusters as well. So, why not learn from sort of what I've learned over all my years and see what you can get out of it, so that, like I said, that we could join forces and we could help each other to make sure that we have the proper plan of attack and we handle these claims the way they're supposed to at the end of it all, help our clients, right? Because that's what it all boils down to. In my opinion, if you are in this industry just for the money, I don't know how long you're going to last, because for those of you right here on the webinar that are just starting out, you know how inconsistent that money can be. However, if you are here for the client only, that should be your number one priority, making sure the client is taken care of, making sure the client is not taken advantage of, making sure the client is satisfied and able to pay for all of their repairs after a catastrophic event occurs. Well, then the money will come. But your number one priority should be the client. So we're doing this to educate you, to come together as a group, to make sure that the client is taken care of the way they're supposed to. So Claims Advocate webinar number 3, we're going to title it, How to Succeed in Appraisal Without Being Afraid. Okay, the reason why we titled it Without Being Afraid is because, frankly, a lot of people are afraid of appraisal. I'm going to get into the reasons why people are afraid of appraisal, but I do not want you to be afraid. So I'm going to try to give you the best and most information that I could possibly give you to make sure that you are no longer afraid to go into appraisal. So let's start with what an appraisal is and what it comes from, okay? So your claim has been paid, right? So you've got that initial payment. Now what? So now what is basically the alternative dispute resolution. It's known as ADR. For those of you who are taking your test or have taken your test recently, or for those of you doing continuing education, you know that there are basically 3 different alternative dispute resolutions. I added litigation in there because that's technically not an alternative dispute resolution, but we all know that sometimes we have no choice but to go to litigation, and it's usually after either a payment has been made or the claim has been denied. So there's a range of dispute resolution processes and techniques that act as a means for disagreeing parties. So I'm going to get into the definition of appraisal on the next slide, but the other 3 alternative dispute resolutions, one of them is mediation. So what mediation is, I got the definition here, but basically mediation is you need to file it with the state. You need to file it with your local state Department of Financial Services. You need to put all the claim information. You are more than welcome to do it as the public adjuster, as the representing party, as a representing person, representing the client. Sorry about that. You are allowed to input that information. You go into the department website, you fill out all the information, you get a confirmation email, and then basically it's sort of a waiting game. It usually takes about a month or so for them. It takes a couple weeks or so for them to receive it. Then they have to find a mediator, then they have to find a location, and then they have to schedule a date for the mediation. So what happens, it usually ranges anywhere from about a month or 2, I would say closer to 2 months, before you actually finally schedule that date for you to sit down in mediation. And what a mediation is basically, it's you with your client in a room, or now on Zoom, but it's basically you and your client in a room across the other adjuster, and in between you all is a mediator. The mediator is really not allowed to do much. The reason why mediation, a lot of people don't like it and don't really want to go with it, and a lot of people think mediation is kind of a waste of time, is because you guys can go back and forth for hours just arguing and fighting and trying to negotiate and doing whatever you can, and you could walk out of that mediation with no resolution whatsoever. So you've just waited 2 months to try to go into mediation. You guys battle it out in a room, and you guys come to no agreement at all. So that's a disadvantage to mediation. An advantage to mediation, though, is if indeed you do not agree, you can still go ahead and you could file a lawsuit, and you can go on, maybe even file an appraisal, and you could go on, sort of with your claim to try to get more money. So I guess that is actually an advantage. Arbitration, personally, full disclosure, I have never even been to an arbitration. So for those of you that have, I would really like to hear your comments. But from what I know about arbitration, the biggest difference, arbitration is a lot like mediation, where it's you with your client up against the opposing adjuster, and there's like a mediator who's looking in between to make sure everybody's okay. But the main difference is that this mediator, or this person who's this, what they call a neutral arbitrator, he or she has could make the final decision, and has the authority to make a decision about the dispute. So they could actually make the decision as to how much is going to be paid, or whatever it is that you guys are disputing. So that's a big difference between arbitration and mediation, is you could be over and done with, and that person could either agree or disagree with you upon completion. I think most of you guys know about litigation. We are not attorneys. Remember that we are not allowed to act as attorneys either. But what we know about the litigation process is, what do they say? The insurance company likes to deny, delay, defend. And if they deny, delay, defend to a point where you can't really do much more as a PA, well, then, it might be time to file a lawsuit with an attorney. So that's just the process. Advantage, disadvantage to litigation. Frankly, advantage is you don't have to do much more once it ends up in litigation. So as a PA, you're there as an expert. You may have to do a deposition, but frankly, for the most part, if it goes to court, you could be called to trial. But for the most part, it's the attorneys and the attorney's team that takes care of it from there on out. There's even attorney-client privileges with the attorney and the client that they can't even discuss with you, some of the stuff. So once it goes litigation, it ends up with the attorney, and there's not much more for you to do, really, not too much. The downside to litigation, as you all know, is it can take a really long time. It can take another year. It can take another 2 years before any kind of settlement is reached. So, those are sort of advantages, disadvantages to all the different kinds of what we call alternative dispute resolutions, ADR. So if you see ADR, you know what that means. Let's get into the appraisal, right? So the appraisal is, here's the definition of the appraisal. I'm gonna read through it. I might cut in and give you some comments as I read it, but this is the appraisal definition as it is in the policy. If you and we, you is your client, which is the insured, we is the insurance company, fail to agree on the amount of loss, either may demand an appraisal of the loss. In this event, each party will choose a competent appraiser within 20 days after receiving a written request from the other. And then the two appraisers will choose an umpire. So once you disagree on the amount of the loss. If you've got a $50,000 estimate and they just paid $5,000, you're disagreeing on the amount of the loss, obviously. So you send what you call an appraisal. You request or you demand appraisal. I like to use the word request because it sounds a little bit nicer, but you request appraisal. Now, what I want you guys to notice is, I hope you can see my mouse, is in this first sentence, I want you guys to really look at this closely. It says, either may demand an appraisal of the loss. It doesn't say that we have to agree. So in Florida, I don't know how it is in other states. So if you are from another state here, I'd like to know if this happens as well. If this happens in Florida, a lot of the new policies, it states that both sides have to agree to go to appraisal. Okay, this is something I really want you to note take. If you're taking notes, this is what I really want you to note take, is this is the older policy, and still a lot of policies are like this, where it says either may demand an appraisal of the loss. Boom, that's it. Once one party demands it, the other party has to agree to it, has no choice but to go there. Now a lot of policies, they state that both sides have to agree. So it's why I say, if I really want to go to appraisal, I won't use words like demand appraisal, and I won't use words like demand estimate. It'll be more like, hey, just requesting appraisal. We'd like to go to appraisal because I would prefer to go to appraisal, and I don't want to upset the other side, and then they reject the appraisal, which we'll get there as well. So I guess I just want to keep that in mind, that remember, this is just where this doesn't say that both sides have to agree. Just want you guys to know that. Hope that didn't get confusing there. So the two appraisers will choose an umpire. Okay, we'll get there too. If they cannot agree on an umpire within 15 days, you or we may request that the choice be made by a judge of a court of record in the state where the described location is located. So that is what you call a court-appointed umpire. It is not something that happens very often. If you've got a good umpire list, or the opposing appraiser has a good list of some people that you've worked with before, and I'm going to get to how you could really create your umpire list. More often than not, you're going to agree on an umpire. I haven't had to go to a court-appointed umpire myself in my 12 years, but I do know sometimes in the attorney and litigation, if they have to go to an appraisal, sometimes they will go straight to a court-appointed umpire. And basically all that is the court is the person who decides who the umpire will be. This is not good, obviously. It's just because it could be anyone. It may not be somebody that you know, so that's not going to be an advantage to really anyone. So you want to try to avoid going to a court-appointed umpire and try to agree on who it will be. The appraisers will separately set the amount of the loss. So what does that mean? You as the appraiser, you will be your estimate is basically what you're setting as the amount of the loss. The opposing appraiser will set his or her own amount of the loss, and you guys will have to try to agree on the amount of the loss. If the appraisers submit a written report of an agreement to us, the amount agreed upon will be the amount of the loss. That's it. Claim is over. Disadvantage to appraisal, why everybody's afraid, which I guess I'm already going to get to real quick, is that's it. Once you agree on an award, it is over. It is done. Your claim is finished. It's almost like signing a release. That's it. There's not much more you can do. You could still get ALE later if big time construction is going on at the house and they need to move out for whatever reason. ALE is still an option. It's still on the table later on. But as far as build back is concerned, that's it. It's done. Once the two appraisers agree, it is over. If they fail to agree, they will submit their differences to the umpire, and a decision agreed to by any two will set the amount of the loss. What does that mean? Once you I can't think of the word, but once you get an umpire and you guys go meet and the umpire comes up with his or her own estimate, that's going to be the value of the loss. One of you, whether you being the insurance appraiser or the insurance company appraiser, has to sign off on that. It says a decision agreed by any two. One is already the umpire. So when you're with the umpire, he's going to be one automatically. You only need one of the two appraisers to sign off on the award. So if you are not in agreement and he is not where you want it to be, well, then the other appraiser is probably going to sign off on it, and vice versa. So again, obviously, big risk of going into the appraisal process is ending up with the umpire and the umpire not siding with you whatsoever, and being very low, under your estimate, and the other appraiser signing off on it, and that's it being done. So that leads us to common fears, right? So, a big question I get asked is, can we still file a lawsuit after the appraisal process is complete? And the answer to that is no. That's it. Like I said, once you complete the appraisal process, it is binding. It is set forth. That is what the amount of the loss is, and no further action can be taken place. So obviously, along with that, the big fear is going to be, will I be able to get enough money for the client? Will the additional funds be enough? Will my client be satisfied? This comes with experience, but all I can tell you is you have to believe in what you're writing. Do not write BS estimates. Don't write estimates that are just crazy, outlandish, including things that are not related to the loss at all, and expect to win an appraisal award or expect to get what you want in appraisal, because you're going to meet a fellow appraiser who, more often than not, you're going to get along with him or her. But frankly, if your estimate is including a roof for a water damage claim and the plumbing, you're not going to get that roof, right? So keep away from fluff. Make sure you write a good estimate. And if you believe in what you're writing up, if you believe in your estimate, well, then you should be okay in appraisal. The reason why I have here, do I know enough about construction, is because I do think that it is a huge advantage to know about construction in the appraisal process. Have no fear, though. I've said it once and I'll say it again. I do not have any construction experience, no construction background, just in my public adjusting experience. When I started as a public adjuster, I did not really know the difference between a tile-based board and a wood-based board. That's kind of a joke, but I just didn't know much. And you just need to know how to read an estimate. Make sure you know how to read an estimate. And as you go on with experience, shadow people, ask questions, talk to GCs, shadow GCs as much as you can. You're going to get to know the ins and outs and the basics of what you need to know for claims. It doesn't have to get too much in depth, but the more you know, the better. But you don't have to know too much about construction. You just have to hold your own. And the reason why I put that question in there too is because, yes, a lot of the appraisers and the umpires that you're going to meet, a lot of them are contractors, GCs, or they had contracting companies in the past, so they know a lot about construction. So just make sure you write a good estimate. That's really what I can tell you, and you should be okay. So All right. So when and how to file an appraisal. So it's like what I went through at the beginning. Be sure to read the policy to find out if the appraisal clause exists and whether it must be agreed to or not. Because if there is no appraisal clause, you could still submit your appraisal request, but obviously you're not going to go to appraisal. You're going to end up somewhere else, either in mediation or litigation. So just read the policy when you sign the claim. Or if you're going in and it has been paid, obviously your first thing is you need to go straight to the policy to make sure the appraisal clause exists, to see how you're going, sort of what your plan of action is going to be. Are you going to send that appraisal request? If one side has to agree to the other, then you could send your appraisal request however you want. You could demand appraisal, you could demand estimate, all that stuff. If it has to be agreed upon, then I'm going to suggest that you go the route that you'll see in our tools that we've copied on here, that basically just request the appraisal. Be a little bit nicer about it. And hopefully they agree to it, and then you go on to the appraisal process. And then, like I said, if there is no appraisal clause, well, then you have to consider mediation or litigation. When and how to file an appraisal? Well, as soon as the initial check comes in, I file the appraisal. I want to wait, even if I've already agreed to the amount or the undisputed amount over the phone or by email, I want to wait until the physical check comes in before the appraisal is actually filed. Also, when and how to file an appraisal, if you can no longer negotiate. I know a lot of you guys are trying to do what I call sort of pre-appraisal settlement. You're trying to just sort of negotiate between you and the adjuster for additional funds. Well, you file the appraisal if you can no longer get to the number that you want to get to. Again, if you're at $50,000, they're at 5, and the desk adjuster is offering to settle 15. That's not right. That's not where you want it to be. So, you could always send an email, say, hey, look, go ahead, send your 15. We're not signing a release, and please see attached our request for appraisal. So as soon as the check comes in, when you can no longer negotiate with the desk adjuster, you're going to send an appraisal request letter. It's attached in the webinar. So for those of you in the free webinar here who are live, you will see I've been using the same appraisal request letter for about 11 years. Well, actually, probably 12 years. So it's the same one. I send it by email, and I send it certified. If you guys want to write this down, I actually send all my certified mail online, and I use click to mail. Click the number 2 mail. So just keep that in mind. It ends up costing about $6 or $7 for each and everything that I send certified. So it can be a little pricey, but we've come to realize when you send things when you send things certified, you get responses. Along with the appraisal request letter that I send certified, I also send it in an attachment by email. And in the email, like I said, I'm very nice. I'm very open. Say, hey, look, here's our appraisal request letter. Please see attached our estimate that we've put together. We'd like to go to appraisal. However, and you're going to see this email for those of you on here in the tools, if you'd like to settle this claim, please give me a call at your earliest convenience, because maybe there's a chance you don't even have to go to appraisal and you can settle it pre-appraisal. So what if your appraisal request is rejected? It happened to me a lot in the beginning when they changed a lot of the policy language to both sides have to agree. So what I like to call a pre-ADR settlement authority. So alternative dispute resolution. Try to settle the claim before going to any of the routes. If you're capable of doing it, if you're not far on your scopes, on your estimate, you've agreed to some stuff, take the time to go through your estimate, take the time to go through the opposing adjuster's estimate, and maybe you guys could agree, talk to your client, find out what they're looking for, and then after those 3 things, talk to the adjuster and see if you guys can come up with an agreement. I know a lot of you guys do this already, but a lot of times, like I said, I send the appraisal request, it's rejected. You could at least maybe try to settle it without doing anything else. But the main thing is that when your appraisal request is rejected, you really only have 2 options. Either you're going to mediation or you're going to litigation. Now, a lot of times my appraisal request has been rejected and they have requested a reinspection on the property. Not a bad thing, because now they're just trying to settle it. They know that you're disputing it, and they're going to send somebody else out to take a look at it, see where the disagreements were, see if you could come up to an agreement. That could have been another thing here, is just reinspection. But mediation, litigation, I already told you, many people think that mediation is a waste of time, so I will give you my best advice. If it is a denial, I wouldn't even bother going to mediation. Chances are they're not going to change their mind. Excuse me, hold on. Excuse me. If you guys are very far apart, again, if you're at $50,000 and they're still at $5,000, the chances of you coming to a resolution in mediation is very slim. So you may want to explain to your client the process of litigation, because you are just way too far apart. You can go to mediation, but you're probably not going to get what you want. It's going to take you at least 2 months to get into the mediation, and you may walk out of there with no agreement at all. That being said, if you're at $50,000 and they're at 30, well, you might be able to come to a resolution mediation. Understand that also in mediation, if you do come to an agreement with the opposing adjuster in mediation, your client will be required to sign a release. So keep that in mind as well. I know attorneys hate it when people sign releases. A lot of adjusters don't like releases to be signed because but if you're able to come up to an agreement, you make the client understand that you're coming to this agreement knowing you can't get any more money. Well, then it might be okay. So mediation, litigation, if your appraisal request is rejected. But just don't be discouraged, is my point, is when you send an appraisal request and it is rejected, don't be discouraged. Appraiser versus public adjuster. So appraiser versus public adjuster. So I wanted to get into this real quick because a public adjuster is said to have an interest in the claim. In Florida, State Farm and FEMA, basically, I don't even think FEMA, but State Farm, they do not allow public adjusters to be the appraiser on an appraisal. If you have a contract with the client and you are representing the client as the public adjuster, you cannot be the appraiser. In Florida, in most other insurance companies, you are allowed, but with State Farm, no. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because in most of the states throughout the country, in most of the states throughout the country, the public adjuster cannot be the appraiser. So I had to get into this because we have an interest in the claim. Because why? We are paid a percentage. We are paid a contingency of the award. An appraiser comes in after coverage has been extended and there is a disagreement on scope and or price. PA gets paid a percentage, while an appraiser is paid either a flat fee or on an hourly basis. You will see with the appraiser contract that we're going to provide you on page 2, you will see the spots that you could put your hourly rate. An appraiser can cost anywhere from $50 an hour to $400 an hour. Really depends on experience, really depends on what you want to charge. But it's very ranged at how much you can charge as an appraiser. So as a public adjuster, we are not a disinterested party. We have an interest in the claim. So if you have a State Farm claim, you sign it from the beginning and you want to take it to appraisal, understand you're going to have to hire someone else to be the appraiser. Okay? I'm going to tell you right now, guys, if you could find a relationship with another public adjuster, anybody with any knowledge about construction or claims can act as an appraiser for a claim. I was speaking with somebody yesterday. Apparently, there's some kind of appraisal or appraiser certification that you can get. Sure, there might be certifications, maybe just to teach you the ropes and stuff like that. But I did ask a couple other people yesterday. Anyone can be the appraiser. It can be an attorney. It can be a GC. It can be a plumber. It can be another PA. Anybody can be an appraiser. So my advice to all of you, if you guys are mostly public adjusters here, which I'm sure you are, try to find another public adjuster. Again, right? Another reason why we need to work together. Usually with State Farm, it cannot be a public adjuster in your company. So it has to be another public adjuster from another company. So if you get a relationship with some other public adjusters, I will be more than happy to help you as well. I can act as the appraiser on your claim. Obviously, you want to find somebody that's not going to charge you too much. And hopefully, maybe you could try to find a way to trade appraisal for appraisal, because the last thing you want is to charge your client your percentage plus the appraisal fee, right? So see if you could find somebody that could sort of help you out. But just know that anyone can be an appraiser. Even maybe if you have a referral partner, like a general contractor or something like that, they can be an appraiser on your claim. That's what I've done. Also, estimators. If you have an estimator that does your estimates, they can be an appraiser on your claims as well. So this is why I put here in some states and some insurance companies in Florida, if you are not a disinterested party, then you cannot be the appraiser. Therefore, if you are being paid on a contingency base on the award, you cannot be the appraiser. Again, if I think most of you are in Florida, it's mostly okay for you to act as the appraiser and the PA. But just keep in mind, there may be changes in the future, because if most of this country is doing it where it has to be two separate people, there's a chance that it might change here as well. The appraisal process step by step. I am almost done, guys. The appraisal process step by step is the first is you want to make contact with the opposing appraiser. The opposing appraiser is going to contact you, or you're going to contact them. Sometimes the desk adjuster gives the contact information and you could reach out to them. Before you schedule an inspection with the appraiser, make sure that you guys exchange your umpire lists and you agree on an umpire. See if they can provide you the umpire list first. If you don't agree with their list or with anybody, send them yours and then see if you guys can agree on an umpire. If it gets nasty in the appraisal process, it's going to be good for you guys to have already agreed on something, which is the umpire, before you guys have disagreed and now you have to agree on an umpire. So you need to agree on an umpire and you need to sign what's called an SOU. It's a selection of umpire agreement, where basically it's just your signature, the opposing appraiser's signature, and the umpire. Sometimes the umpire signature is on there, and sometimes it's just their name saying that you and I have agreed to this umpire in case we come to a big disagreement. After you've agreed on the umpire, you're going to agree on a date for the appraisal inspection. You're going to inspect the property. You're going to review the opposing appraiser's estimate, and you're going to state your case, right? You're going to review the opposing, and you're going to try to come to an agreement. If you guys come to an agreement, you guys sign off on the award. You'll have a check within 2 weeks. If you guys do not agree if you guys cannot agree on anything, well, then you're going to have to contact the umpire and schedule a date with the umpire on a future date. Relationship building is vital, guys, to appraisal success. I talk about it all the time. This business itself, especially public adjusting, it's so important to build relationships with the opposing adjusters, with the opposing field adjusters, with everybody. Because as you progress in your career, you will be meeting a lot of the same experienced appraisers. It is important to get along with the people you will be going up against, okay? And the reason why I put this in here is I was talking to a fellow adjuster earlier this week, say, hey, what do you think I should include in this stuff? And he's like, you got to build relationships. Keep doing these webinars. Go to the Facebook groups and meet everybody. There's windstorm conference is coming up in January. Go to that. You're going to meet a lot of umpires there, a lot of other appraisers there, a lot of attorneys. So just keep building relationships with people, because I promise you it's going to help you in your appraisal success and in your umpire success if you start to do more and more of these. In the umpire meeting, if you and the opposing appraiser cannot agree on the amount, it's time to schedule an inspection with the umpire. You agree on a date and time to meet the umpire. When you agree on a date and time with the umpire, you want to email the umpire your estimate and your expert documentation to help prove your case, because obviously there's a disagreement, right? It's usually whatever. It's not like a fight or anything, but there is a disagreement. A disagreement is a disagreement. It could get ugly or it could be cordial, but it's a disagreement. So you need to state your case to the umpire, and I would suggest that you do that by sending an email directly to the umpire. You could attach the appraiser if you like. That's actually good. And just say, hey, look, here's my expert documentation. Here's my estimate. Our disagreement is on the following line items, the following things, and here's why I think they should be paid. Boom. Expert documentation is going to help your case a lot, guys. When you meet with the umpire, you have to, again, present your case. And I would print everything out, have a folder ready in case he's unable to see it or he didn't print it out. Have your estimate in hand, have your expert documentation in hand, and have your arguments and your case ready to go to be presented so that you can get what you want to get. Again, relationship building is also vital to the umpire success. The advantage to working with an experienced firm is this is how I guess this is sort of how you get your umpire, right? It's umpire list. If you work for a firm, talk to the fellow adjusters and get their umpire list, because chances are if you've got some experienced adjusters working in your firm, you could talk to them and they could share their list with you. Network at public adjuster conferences to meet umpires in our industry. Like I was saying, Windstorm is coming up now in January. You want to meet with the umpires there, get to know them, have a couple of drinks with them, and you want to see if you can put them on your list, and make sure that they're going to be fair. So talk about the insurance claim game, talk about what you're all about, what you represent, and what you're looking for in an umpire to put on your list. Be friendly with opposing adjusters and appraisers, because they may already be umpires or they will be in the future. So, this organization, this is growing. A public adjusting is growing, and a lot of PAs end up being umpires. A lot of contractors end up being umpires later on. So you want to get along with them. Again, it's all about relationship building. But also go on the Facebook groups, and you could ask the Facebook groups if they'll share their umpire list. If you meet some other fellow adjusters on the field, ask them about their umpire list. Just see if you could try to come up with a nice list of fair umpires that you know that if you have them on a claim and you have a big disagreement with the opposing appraiser, that they're going to be fair, and honest to make sure that you get what you need for your client. Last one, guys. The keys to a successful appraisal. So sort of like a quick recap, I guess, is building relationships again and again and again. I'm going to say it time and time again. If you want to grow your business, if you want to get referrals, if you want to get more claims, if you want to have successful appraisals, if you want to have successful negotiations, if you want to be successful at all, build strong, positive relationships with everyone. Have relationships with umpires and get along with the opposing appraiser is essential too. You know, when I meet the opposing appraiser, hey, let's work together to try to get what we need for the client. Because at the end of the day, like I said in the beginning of the webinar, the client is the most important person at the end of the day. Estimate comprehension. Know how to read an estimate thoroughly. Know exactly what you feel should be included. Get your arguments ready to go. So look through the old estimate, see what they didn't include. Look through your estimate to see what must be included. Maybe look at a couple things that you'd be willing to concede to, but make sure that you get everything in there. Make sure you have knowledge of reading an estimate, because you're going to receive an estimate from the appraiser. You might have to go through his as well. So again, an expert documentation, okay? If there's a big disagreement, for example, tile flooring, hollow tiles, if you can get a flooring expert out there that states that that damage is indeed due to water, you know, and you have a big scope issue, that's going to help you get the tile flooring. And I have a good story for that. It happened with me. So I was able to get the expert documentation, 4, 5, 6, 7 tiles in a 2,500 square foot house. The appraiser disagreed with me. The umpire agreed with me. And we got all the tile flooring throughout the house. And that's because of my expert documentation. So be prepared with your expert documentation to back up your reasons for including it in your estimate. Try all these steps, guys, and let me know the results. We're going to try to do a group course in November or December. We're not sure how it's going to be or what we're going to do exactly, but it's something that we want to do. We did private one-on-one consulting. It's basically we're going to take that course that we did. We're going to fine-tune it. We're going to make it better. We're going to edit the book as well. And for all those that do sign up for the group course, we don't know how many people we're going to accept, but we're going to do it all at once. It's going to be like a live big Zoom meeting. It's going to be like an all-day course, sort of like we were doing one-on-one. We're going to provide you with a book. You're going to get the course, and we'll let you know when that happens. But that's definitely the goal. Remember, guys, I'm sure most of you already know about all this stuff, but we're going to go heavy right now for to finish off the year. We're going to go heavy with the podcast and with the YouTube video. So make sure you don't miss out. The Claims Game podcast is available on Spotify, Apple iTunes, Google Play, which is now Google Podcast, I think, and YouTube. So make sure you're on it. I've got some really nice guests lined up already for October and November. So we're very excited. Roofers, plumbers, all kinds of stuff. So now it's time for Q&A, right? So let's get back to it. I went a little bit long, 10 minutes long. So let's see here. I got to get back to my slide. All right. So let's see. Ask a question. Only 13 questions. Let's see. All right, here we go. What's up, Vince? I have an appraisal next. Oh, wait. Okay. All right. Who pays the additional cost? The appraisers and the judge or court costs. So there's no additional cost to going to appraisal. But if you have to get an appraisal, an appraiser who is charging an hourly fee, well then, yeah, the client is going to have to pay the appraiser, which is why if you could work something out with another public adjuster who could be your appraiser on your claims, you could be the appraiser on their claims. Maybe you could work something out where it's an appraisal for an appraisal or some kind of fee that's not too outlandish, so that you don't charge your client your percentage and the appraisal. I hope that makes sense. And the umpire costs money to the insured. I did not mention that. Wow, I can't believe I forgot to mention that. Guys, an umpire does cost money. So you have to understand that it's always split down the middle. So an umpire is going to cost, give or take, $3,000. That $3,000 is going to be split 50% between the insured and the insurance company. So it's going to be an additional $1,500 to go to the umpire. So back to the $50,000 example. If you're at $50,000, insurance company's at $5,000, and the appraiser comes back and says, we're going to pay $10,000, it's going to be worth the $1,500 to go to the umpire that you already know, that you've already agreed to, because you're most likely going to get what you need. At least you're going to get more than the extra $5,000. However, if you're at 50 and the appraiser comes up to 40, 45,000, around there, see if you can work it out with the appraiser to get everything that you need, because it will not be worth the $1,500 and the time to go to the umpire. So I totally forgot that. Umpire does cost money, so be sure that you are either very far apart or you just really think that you can get that money that you want, that difference, in addition to the $1,500 that the client has to pay. I had a recent one where we went from $5,000. The appraiser couldn't get me much more. We agreed to go to the umpire. Well, with the umpire, we ended up with $78,000. So it was worth the $1,500, if you know what I mean. Can a contractor working on the claim request/demand appraisal? Can a contractor working on the claim request demand appraisal? I don't think so, because the appraisal needs to be requested, demanded by either somebody representing the insured or as a PA or the insured themselves. In a lot of states, only the insured can request the appraisal. So a contractor working on the appraisal, absolutely not, because that would be them acting as an adjuster, which is really not allowed. So I would say a contractor, no, they would have to get an appraiser, and the insured or the appraiser would have to request the appraisal. Appraisal is an appraisal of the loss. With that said, can you appraise a disputed scope, and then can the appropriate price adjustment be appraised, or only does the appraisal only apply to the cost of what scope is undisputed? So it's different from state to state. In Texas, for example, the scope, you could only appraise what is disagreed in what is agreed to already in scope. So, for example, tile flooring example, if it's not in the original estimate, the tile flooring, in some states like Texas, you cannot appraise the tile flooring. In Florida, thankfully, we can. So, it does change. It does change from state to state. So make sure that you look at the state laws, at the state statutes. Make sure that you're looking at everything to make sure that if there's a big disagreement and it's mainly on scope, appraisal might not be the way to go. You may not want to go to the appraisal because you won't be able to get what you're looking for anyway. I have an appraisal next Friday, and I've already submitted my estimate and SPOL. Unfortunately, there are new damages to the wood flooring that were not included in my original estimate. It's a roof claim. Should I add the new damages to the estimate and fill out a new SPOL? Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Fill out a new SPOL, adjust your estimate, have that signed and notarized, and make sure that if you've already got the appraisal next Friday, I would make the appraiser aware. If you want, you can just let them know that, hey, there's some damages that were caused, just to give you a heads up when you walk in there that we're going to be claiming this as well. So it's not a bad idea to give them a heads up. Irma's over. What other storms would you recommend for wind damage post Irma? Well, we just got hit in the Panhandle. So just Hurricane Sandy, I think it's called. It just hit, or Sally. It just hit Florida. It just hit the Panhandle up by close to Panama City, but even more west of Panama City. So the appraisal process is a bigger risk and bigger reward. Am I right? Yeah, pretty much, but not necessarily. I've failed once with the umpire, where the umpire did not side with me whatsoever, and it did not turn out the way I wanted to. But what I always say is that what you're able to get in the appraisal process is probably not going to be that much less, or maybe not even that much more than what you would get in litigation. So that's the way I look at it, except I'm basically able to get it done within a month or so, as opposed to a year or so. So, yeah, it could be bigger risk, bigger reward, but not necessarily. Appraisal on damages gets better with time, correct? Are there any books you can recommend to educate ourselves? Can you do appraisals with a 620 license? I'm sure you can do appraisals with a 620 license. Yes, I don't see why not. Appraisal on damages get better with time. I don't really understand what that question means. Are there any books you can recommend to educate yourselves? Yeah, there's like the Skipton book. There's the Chip Merlin book. There's a lot of public adjusting books out there now, actually. I'd say there's a good handful of them that are out there that I'm sure talk about the appraisal process, and you could get a little bit more on that. Once the Umpire the Appraiser Award is signed and Mold EMS was not taking into consider during the appraisal, can restoration companies still get paid on their side? Yes. Or does it always have to be included? Yes, the mitigation companies can still get paid even after you agree to the award, because that's just a total. If they have an AOB and they have everything signed towards them, then it's not a problem. Where in the policy is the appraisal clause? Well, it's somewhere in the middle of the policy. If you get the policy on PDF, I would suggest searching appraisal, but it's in the, I believe it's in the conditions section. Is the condition section? I think it's the condition section. It's like in the middle of the policy, like around page 15, 16 or so. Is the pre-appraisal amount the starting point? No. If you don't agree in pre-appraisal, then that's it. I mean, you start basically from scratch when you go to appraisal. So you could mention what you were going after, but it really doesn't make a difference because who you're meeting in appraisal is somebody completely different, and they really don't have any knowledge of any kind of negotiation that was going on before that. Have you ever gone to appraisal over O&P? No. Well, everything's usually included. When I'm in appraisal, I'm going for O&P. I'm going for all of it. If it wasn't included from the beginning, I'm going to present my arguments as best that I can. So not just over. I would, if it's just over O&P, sure, I would. But it's usually other stuff, other things that we're disagreeing on as well. What are your thoughts on regarding depreciation being withheld within an appraisal award? I'm not a fan of it. I don't like it when that happens, but that being said, it does happen from time to time, and same thing goes when you get the appraisal award. Just know that once repairs start to get completed, you got to get the depreciation. Is there a way to get around depreciation or suggest it can be released as soon as possible? If the depreciation is under a certain amount, Carlos, the depreciation should automatically be released. So if there's a way you can get along with the appraiser, talk to the appraiser, say, hey, come on, don't take out so much depreciation so that it could all be released. More often than not, you're able to get it all released. How can State Farm not allow us to act as our own appraisers? Aren't all insurers in the state subject to the same regulations that prevent specific company from making their own requirements? You would think so, but that's not the case. I don't know what to tell you. State Farm, sometimes they play by their own rules, to be honest. So that, yeah, it's just the way they have written but sometimes like when other insurance companies, they set the precedent for certain policy changes, and then sometimes other insurance companies change it as well. Is there a time frame for the appraisal process to be settled? No, not necessarily. The only time frame that I know of is the 20 days that they have to respond to your appraisal request. But from my understanding, Erica, it's just a reasonable time frame that you need to have everything scheduled, umpire decided, and met out there and try to resolve it. I've never had an appraisal process, even out to the umpire, last more than a month or two. So figure about a month or two. Our contact to the client has a part that says no doubt, no out-of-pocket fees, aside for appraisal and umpire fees. Of course, that's not out-of-pocket. Our contract to the client has a part that says no out-of-pocket fees aside from, right. So no out-of-pocket fees, which means you don't charge them anything for like your overhead or anything like that. I always say out-of-pocket fees usually include the expert, the plumber, or the repair that needs to be done. But the appraisal and the umpire fee is absolutely, if there's a separate appraiser and you have to get an umpire, yes, absolutely. The insured has to pay for the appraiser and the umpire fees. What website should we use for weather reports? I use weatherunderground.com. That's what I use, weatherunderground.com. Is mitigation included in the appraisal award? No, not usually. Usually what you are disputing is strictly build back. It's just the estimate and the disagreements on scope and the disagreements on the prices. So how do we go around company? All right, guys, we're going to go 2 more minutes. So if you have any more questions, 11:48, we're going to go literally just 2 more minutes. How do we go around company that would like to do their own repair? How do we go around a company that would, I don't really understand. Yes, Neil. How do we go around a company that would like to do their own repair? Are you talking about the right to repair from the insurance company? That's a tough one to fight. And if you're talking about the insured that wants to hire whoever they want, well, that's who they want to hire. All right, guys. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. That was awesome. Let me look at the poll. So we had 73% of you have never done an appraisal. Wow. Guys, don't be afraid. Go for it. Do it. You can do it. Trust me. 26% of you have, though. So that's kind of cool. So guys, thank you so much for coming on. That is going to wrap up our webinar. Again, make sure you keep a lookout. We've got so many things coming on. It's like it's crazy. We've got a lot of podcasts already lined up. We've got videos already lined up. We've got the nice little studio. You see how it looks a little bit better now. So thank you all, honestly, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you all for following. Thank you all for following all the stuff. Make sure you share it whenever you can. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Instagram. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on LinkedIn. And we're going to, I believe, I don't know, Milan, if you provided them with the tools already, with the link for that. And then also we're going to download this webinar and you guys are going to get your own personal copy of it. So 43 of you, there was over 50 here for a while. So that's kind of cool. Thank you guys for joining. I'm not going to hold too much more of your time. Enjoy your Tuesday. Have a great week and go out there and get after it, baby. All right. See you guys. Thank you.